had a really tough year. I'm not going to bore you guys with the details, but suffice it to say, if you get hit by a bus, you're going to get hurt. I guess I'll just wish for things to get better. Shit in one hand, wish in the other, but it's all going to be shit the next day. All I want to do is see my babies, if I can actually see them, because I've only got 4 days to live. Bizarre. We can be 100% sorry for somebody about horrible abuse they suffered and still be honest with ourselves when something comes up that says, that doesn't make sense. The red flags are waving. I can't agree to go with you over here, but I am really sorry this other stuff happened to you. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. I want to talk about Virginia Giuffre. Now, she has been everywhere of late. And if you don't recall who Virginia Giuffre was, she was the accuser who accused Prince Andrew of taking advantage of her. She accused Alan Dershowitz of taking advantage of her. And all of this had happened under Jeffrey Epstein's watch, along with his, I wouldn't say girlfriend, but definitely a helpmate in his life, Ghislaine Maxwell. So Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had teamed up together to find all of these women for Jeffrey Epstein because, according to doctor's orders, he had to find happiness 3 times a day. And, that was a difficult task, and Ghislaine couldn't keep up with it. So she had gone out and tasked other people, other girls that she found, girls working at boutiques, girls that she saw, walking through Central Park, all these different young girls she had found and pulled into her life and Jeffrey Epstein's life in order to help service him and all of his many, many needs. Now, Jeffrey Epstein was caught doing this and had taken a prison sentence, but it was the greatest sweetheart deal of all time. And his lawyer during that had been a man named Alan Dershowitz. Now, Alan Dershowitz is a criminal lawyer, and he has taken on many controversial clients. And his claim is that, yes, of course he was shocked when he found out what Jeffrey Epstein was really all about. But as a criminal lawyer, his job is to give somebody due process, whether he agrees with their lifestyle or not. And had he ever personally seen Jeffrey Epstein with a young girl, he would have made sure that he distanced himself as far as possible. But it is important to say that Alan Dershowitz was also accused by this Virginia Giuffre as somebody who had taken advantage of her. And of course, we all remember when Virginia Giuffre came out and said that Prince Andrew had taken advantage of her. And it wasn't hard to believe because there's the infamous picture of Andrew standing with Virginia and Ghislaine Maxwell's in the background. It's a very convenient picture that sort of displays the whole scenario at hand. Now, when Virginia Giuffre came out and said all of these things about Jeffrey Epstein, no one was surprised, and no one disbelieves the fact that he took advantage of her. There was many other witnesses who came forward and said the same things. She had the same story as many other accusers. So there's not a faction of people who don't believe the Jeffrey Epstein story. It is curious that when Ghislaine Maxwell was on trial after Epstein had been in prison and then took himself out, as they have tried to tell us, it is curious that when Ghislaine Maxwell found herself in court, there was no calling Virginia Giuffre to the witness stand because she was not considered a credible witness, which is crazy because she's been one of the loudest voices in this entire accusation circus. And nobody, to my knowledge, has ever believed that she lied about Ghislaine Maxwell or Jeffrey Epstein's involvement in her life. But when Prince Andrew met with these accusations, you'll recall, and this was like 5 years ago, that he had panicked and he had gone and done an interview, probably against legal counsel, because he's like, it was the worst, most problematic, most horrific thing you've ever seen.
One of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Roberts, has made allegations against you. She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating, possibly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was, yes.
He was like so visibly shaken. It felt like every time he opened his mouth, he was lying. He was a pompous, arrogant ass. It was so unflattering to him. And quite frankly, it made people not necessarily be like, oh, I hope she's right, you're a terrible person. But it really made it difficult for people to want to side with Andrew. He has had a checkered past, if ever there was one. And Andrew is a very disagreeable person to a lot of people. There's members of the royal family that people generally gravitate towards, and I would say that Andrew is not one of them. He comes across as a pompous, bratty, entitled little boy. And he apparently, behind the scenes, acts like one because his personal maid has come out and told ridiculous stories, though true, but just crazy sounding stories, of him and his huge collection of teddy bears that had to be displayed on his bed in certain ways, and other stuffed animals that had to be sitting around the room in certain ways, and that the teddy bears were to be lined up on the bed during the daytime, and then at night had to be taken off and arranged in a different way. And he is so particular about how he wants these teddy bears arranged at his house that he literally has laminated instructions to be given to new maids so they don't mess it up. So this isn't a person firing on all cylinders. But he's also just a very distasteful person. When he was in the Falkland Islands and he was fighting over there, feeling against him on the ground amongst his soldiers was, it would be awesome if your helicopter went down. You're driving us crazy. Now, that's not a positive thought, but I'm just saying this is a person who's very disliked by many people who have come across him, who've ever seen him. I mean, just those of us who have witnessed his behavior in public. He is bratty. He is annoying. That doesn't mean that he did anything with Virginia. It just means that I think that there was less of an outcry at wanting to defend his reputation. And certainly he didn't seem to care to defend his reputation because when she made these claims against him, he paid her £16 million to be quiet. Now, at first, everyone kept saying it was undisclosed amount of money, but it was $16 million, and that has been reported. So rather than defend himself in court, rather than say, I have nothing to hide, I do not need this, and I don't care what anybody says, I didn't do it, I never took advantage of a young girl, I absolutely will fight this in court, release every document, you can go through my things, I have nothing to hide, I don't care what she says, she's a liar, and I'll prove it. But he couldn't do that because his relationship with Epstein was very problematic. After Epstein had been released from jail in Florida and was again living up in New York City, he came and stayed multiple days with Epstein in New York. They were seen taking walks together. He stayed in the person's house. And all of his explanations as for why he was there were so paltry and lame. I stayed there because it was convenient for me to stay there. It's like, consider your reputation, right? And so he says it wasn't a big deal. He was just a friend who offered me a bed for the night. Like, are you poverty stricken? You can't afford the closest hotel? Like, what are you talking about? You had to stay in his house. It was it's just the sort of thing that you do. No, the sort of thing you do is to make sure that you, number one, don't go and see him because he's a sex offender. But then number two, if there was some reason that you needed to see him, if you needed to square some things away with him, if you needed to tell him off, I don't know what you need to not stay in his house. And then you need to not go outside and stroll Central Park with him where you can be photographed with the sex offender. So he gave up, he just threw up his hands and blamed it on his mother because he said, well, I couldn't ruin the Jubilee. And, she's an elderly woman. So, and of course we know now she was also struggling with a terminal illness. But what he says and what his defenders say is that he had no choice. The only thing he could do was to just pay her a bunch of money because he couldn't ruin the Jubilee and his mother's last years with this protracted legal situation. But I feel like as a mother, go to court and defend your name, son. If you're innocent, don't sit back and let the public think that you're guilty while you pay her wads of cash. Because in my last days, I want your name cleared. And I don't feel like the Queen would have ever breathed down his neck and been like, no, you can't. My Jubilee has to go off without a hitch, and your, weird detractors and accusers are making too much noise, so just pay them off. Like, I just don't think that would be the case. Wouldn't you much rather your son come out strong and swinging and being like, that's a lie and I'm proving it? I have never in my life hurt a child. I don't think anybody thinks that the Queen wanted him to be quiet if he could have defended himself. But the thing is, he can't because he's so nefarious. He's done so many questionable things that he knew that when Discovery came around, he would be in hell. When they started deposing people, he would be in the very pits of Hades. So his best bet was to just pay her off. Because even if he didn't do anything with her, we don't believe it, but even if he didn't, even if what he alleges is true, there's just so many other things that would come out if a court case were to proceed. Well, then Virginia, because as long as she's taking Prince Andrew down, she decides that she's also going to say that Alan Dershowitz was a big problem for her. And that at one point, he and 2 other underage girls had been taken to dinner with him and Clinton, Bill Clinton, and they'd all gone to dinner, and this, old geezer had taken advantage of her. But when Alan Dershowitz was like, "You are a liar. I absolutely have never done that. I don't even know you. And I will take you to court, and I got nothing to hide. So let's go. Every recording, every document, every video, like it all. I want everyone to see it. I want all of the information to come out, shine a bold spotlight on my personal life because I got nothing to hide." Then she skulked off and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I might have made a mistake." She, under oath, perjured herself then because she had said under oath that Alan Dershowitz had taken advantage of her. But now it was, well, it's a troubled time in my life, and I might have made a mistake. That's a massive mistake, and according to Alan Dershowitz, he suffered for 8 years under her accusations and lost all kinds of opportunities in his personal life as well as his reputation. And Alan Dershowitz has had him taking on Epstein as a client is problematic for a lot of people, and me included. Like, to me, I'm just like, I could never defend somebody who had accusations against them in a sexual nature. Like, I couldn't, even if I know, and, maybe that's why I wouldn't be a good criminal lawyer, because I know that everyone deserves a fair trial. I know that everyone deserves to have a defense in court, but I couldn't do it. Because if I had any inclination that this person had sinned against another person in such a horrible way, I couldn't even try to find a way in which to plead your innocence. So I'd make a terrible criminal lawyer. But Alan Dershowitz was an easy character to hate because he had defended this person who all of America hates. Everybody hates Epstein. And everybody wants all of Epstein's friends and compatriots to be revealed. And we're all waiting with bated breath for the lists to finally come out of the people associated with him in a blackmail capacity. Not like, oh, who are his friends? We know who that is. But who is he blackmailing? That's what we want to know. And we can't seem to get that information. But Alan Dershowitz was an easy person to hate. And so when she decided to accuse him, everyone was like, you know what? Yeah, you are a problematic person. And then those of the people in the world who just hate anything related to Trump hated him doubly. When he defended Trump, people wanted to pile on. But then when he came out swinging and was like, I got nothing to hide, and that girl is a complete and total liar, then people were like, wait a second, maybe Virginia isn't totally a credible witness. And then people were like, well, what's the deal with Andrew? Does that mean that he could possibly be innocent too? And I say no. So what's going on with Virginia recently that is the cause of this whole video? And why did I need to give you all that backstory? Because Virginia is in the news now, having released these really frightening pictures of herself. She appears to be in a hospital bed with extensive bruising on her face. What is this? What is happening to her? And she posted this on Instagram with a very curious caption. This year's been the worst start to a new year, but I won't bore anyone with the details. But I think it's important to note that when a school bus driver comes at you driving 110 kilometers as we were slowing for a turn, that no matter what your car is made of, it might as well be a tin can. I've gone into kidney renal failure. They've given me 4 days to live, transferring me to a specialist hospital in urology. I'm ready to go, just not until I see my babies one last time. But you know what they say about wishes. Shit in one hand and wish in the other, and I guarantee you it's still going to be shit at the end of the day. Thank you all for being the wonderful people of the world and for being a great part of my life. God bless you all. XX Virginia. And then she has like a sad emoji, praying emoji, butterfly emoji. That seems pretty wild. But you might say to yourself, well, she only has 4 days to live. She's probably not in the best frame of mind. And I would agree. But the story has a lot of holes in it. And she posted that. Apparently the accident had happened on March 24th. And she's then in a hospital bed looking bruised and wounded. And she's posting these mysterious and cryptic messages about only 4 days to live. And then later, only a few days later, and this was, all over the news yesterday, she's now saying, it's not 4 days. That wasn't 100% true. That was a mistake. And anyway, I'm, just trying to get better. Her family has come out and told a story in which she was hit by a school bus. And the school bus driver, and she had called for the police. And the police's response was, well, we don't have anybody in the area who can come and help you. So if you think you're hurt, you should probably go to the hospital. That was their response. And that the bus driver had a bus full of children and just drove off. And she was sort of left to make her way to the hospital, presumably in the car that she'd been hit in. And that she was at the hospital trying to survive, and that the bus driver, the next day reported the accident having happened. He did report it, but, it was the next day. And it's a curious story because that's not the one the police have. And it's also not the one that the hospitals have. Apparently, there's no hospital in that area where she would have received medical care. They don't have any record of her. I think it's called the Eastern Metropolitan Hospital system doesn't have any record of Virginia in their hospitals. And so I'm not sure what this specialist urology hospital is. That didn't seem to be available information either. It's also interesting that the police say that, well, they were aware of a minor accident to a car from a bus, and that the accident had caused about $2,000 worth of damage. The police say there wasn't anybody in the bus, and that the bus driver wasn't having to rush off with all these hysterical children, the way the family has come out to say and to defend Virginia. That, the family says the bus driver left the scene of the crime, supposedly because they had to get this bus full of screaming kids back to school. But the police say there wasn't anybody in the bus, that the bus driver reported the accident within this time frame that he legally had to, and that they didn't know of any injuries that had occurred at the scene of this crime. But if you see the picture of Virginia, she's very bruised up. I want to say that, well, if this is true and she was really injured in that car accident, I'm so sorry for her. That must have been really scary and really traumatic. And if you really were really hurt and the police weren't able to come, and they weren't coming, and they're like, make your way to the hospital, and your kidneys are failing, and you are so on the brink of death that you get there and doctors are like, you have 4 days to live because this crash has put you into kidney failure. That's terrible. I just never heard of a crash causing kidney failure, but maybe if you got hit from the back really hard. But if you got hit from the back really hard, it's interesting that so much of her bruising is on her face. I don't know. Maybe she hit her face. I don't know. I don't know how it happened. I just feel like if I had hit my face so badly to receive that bruising, I would probably be pretty swollen. And I don't know the way hospitals in Australia work, but if you're in an American hospital, they usually have you take off your jewelry and put a gown on. That's not happening in that picture. So, I don't know. I have my questions about it. And my greatest question right now is that I feel like this strange and problematic story, because none of the facts seem to be lining up, seem to me more like Virginia is in a desperate play for her estranged children to finally come back into her life. She is married to this martial artist guy, and he and she had met in Thailand, and then when she was younger. And then they've been married for 19 years, but they are not in a good place, and they're estranged. And now it would appear that her three teenage children, are also estranged from her. And I think that this estrangement is leading her to be very desperate for their attention, because what mother doesn't want a relationship with their children? So, of course, I'm not mocking her for feeling desperate, I want my kids back. But this business of posting on social media, this dramatic tale of events, with bruising that quite frankly looks like makeup. It does. It's very weirdly, her bruising looks weird. And it looks weird. There's no swelling. And if she took this picture right after the accident, what is happening? Of course, there's other pictures of her that she's also posted from her hospital bed. She appears to have, put on some makeup to cover the bruising. She's very good at makeup because that kind of bruising would be very difficult to cover up if you were even a makeup artist. I think it would be hard to cover up that bruising. I have a hard time covering up the dark circles under my eyes. I don't know even where I would start with the bruising that she had in this picture versus how she was able to cover it in this picture. That's phenomenal. She didn't want to cover up this bruising here. So that's interesting that you would want to cover your bruising on your face, but you wanted to make sure that this bruising over here, right there, right on your collarbones where people can see, you didn't want to cover that up, even though you have the skill set to cover up bruises really remarkably well. This story's not adding up to me, and I honestly think that she over-dramatized an event that happened. I do believe she was hit by a bus. I'm not taking that away from her. But I think that the story that she tells, in which she was hit by a bus, abandoned by the police and the bus driver, that she had to make her way to the hospital while she was in kidney failure, the doctor's giving her 4 days to live, and she posts this really sort of sad, sort of pathetic message about, I've had a really tough year. I'm not going to bore you guys with the details, but suffice it to say, if you get hit by a bus, you're going to get hurt. I guess I'll just wish for things to get better. Shit in one hand, wish in the other, but it's all going to be shit the next day. All I want to do is see my babies if I can't actually see them because I've only got 4 days to live. Bizarre. It's very, very bizarre. Now, I feel like her family's explanation that, she didn't mean to post this to a public and worldwide view. She didn't mean to put it on Instagram. This was actually supposed to be on her personal Instagram page. And that this had nothing to do with you guys, so you don't need to get to judge her because she actually meant to put it on Facebook. I'm like, exactly. This, I almost can believe it because this sad message begging for everyone's attention has Facebook written all over it. But she didn't. She posted it on Instagram. She wanted the world to see. She wanted to invite the world into this horrible thing that had happened to her. And even if this was the message that you wanted just your personal friends to see, that's still kind of lame. Like, why are you posting this weird, rambly message about shitting in one hand and wishing with the other, but it's all going to be shit in the end? Like, what? Is that the last thing you want to tell us? You've only got a couple days left. Of course, again, as I repeat myself, she didn't really have 4 days to live. That was just kind of like something she threw in there to get your attention. But then as it turns out, no one had ever told her that. I think the thing that's most mysterious is the fact that no hospital seems to have any record of her being there. So I'm confused. But there are other people who are coming out swinging against her. It's the usual suspect of Lady Victoria Harvey. Now, the way she chose to do it was classless and horrible. She's defended Prince Andrew for years. And ever since Virginia has come out saying things, then Victoria has, come hustling over to be like, she's a liar. She has no credibility. I'll tell you, the person to me that is just out to lunch is Lady Victoria. Because the fact that she could support Andrew so extensively and for so many years, because she used to go out with him, but she still seems to hold a candle for him because he can do no wrong in her eyes. And I'm like, are you guys cut out of the same cloth? Like, how could anybody stand to be around that guy? He's the literal worst. But she has for years said that Virginia's a liar, that picture that you've seen of the, Andrew and Virginia and Ghislaine, that was just piecemeal, that some person, and this is a true story she tells, that she had met with the guy who had made this photograph and that he had shown her how he had cut all these characters out of separate photos, and then he had put them together in a composite image, and then he had taken a picture of the composite image to make it look like a photograph, and he had shown her how he had done it. And the reason he wasn't coming out publicly to say that he had done that is that the royal family had kind of blackmailed him and given him some stuff that had belonged to Lady Diana. And that because he now had some of Diana's stuff and had been bribed by the royal family, now he couldn't come out and just tell the honest truth about how that photograph was really made. And so it's kind of, his hands are tied. But she just wants to get it out there that the photograph is fake.
That doesn't make sense.
So she's been over there working like an absolute slave, trying to get Andrew's reputation rehabilitated. And she was so excited when Alan Dershowitz was coming out and saying, I'm going to fight this stupid accusation. And then Virginia sort of skulked off into the corner and was like, I might have made a mistake. Then Lady Victoria is coming hustling over and being like, see, I told you, she's a liar. Look how she lies. It's like, well, she might have lied in that situation. It seems clear that she did. But why was Prince Andrew so willing to hand over $16 million to this liar if he could have equally proven his innocence? You know? So she's been a problematic character for a while because she's so unable to see that even if she wanted to defend her friend Andrew, that he might have hurt himself in a number of situations because his behavior is so poor that now that he might truly be innocent, he can't ever come out and explain how he is because then all this other trash from his past is going to come forward. But Lady Victoria decided that she was going to post something on her Instagram page in response to Virginia's cry for help. And she posted a picture of Virginia, and above it she wrote in bold red letters, "Karma." That's terrible. You know, I feel like we can question the narrative of the story. I feel like we can say painfully inaccurate in some of its retelling. But I don't know if we need to post a picture of somebody who seems to be suffering in their hospital bed and write, "Karma." Seems like a classless move. I don't think it's classless to ask some questions because things aren't adding up. But to revel in somebody else's problems, and even if none of the problems that Virginia is discussing in this post are actually true, she clearly is in a point in her life when she is hurting. You know, and even if all of this was just a cry to get her husband and her children's attention, obviously she's hurting. So I don't think we need to post anything and be like, "Karma!" You know, "I always told you all she was a liar. I always knew this day would come." I mean, possibly. I mean, even the U.S. government was like, questionable witness. Let's not drag her into the Ghislaine thing. She might hurt what we're trying to do over here. You know, so I do think she is a person fraught with complications and possibly has a tenuous relationship with the truth. I don't really think that she was hit by a bus to the extent that she has described. I think even her own family is not that worried about it because her dad is like telling every newspaper you go, the Telegraph, the Sun, Daily Mail, like her dad was on the phone with all of these publications being like, "Yeah, I heard something happened to Virginia and geez, damn, I just, you know, if she needs anything, she knows she can call for anything." I'm like, well, she did just tell you she had 4 days to live. So that might have been the cry for help in which she was saying, "Hey, could you get over here, Dad? I'm dying." So even he didn't seem to take it that seriously. And what's curious is he, in all of this, you know, mass media attention that he was receiving, as everyone was like, "Hey, Virginia's dad, what's going on?" He was like, "Yeah, you know, I've always felt really bad about what happened to Virginia." And, you know, because she had been working at Mar-a-Lago and then Epstein picked her up from Trump's house. And, you know, I've always felt really bad about what happened. And she's, you know, clearly had like a lot of stuff going on. And I didn't even know about it. Like, she would go off on these trips and come back at night. She's just a really great actress because I had no idea this stuff was happening to her. On the one hand, yeah, 100%. I think that there's tons of people who have been used and abused and get really good at hiding the facts of the matter. I would never take from Virginia that something really terrible happened to her under the care of Epstein. It seems like a given that something would have happened. Epstein didn't just have you over to his house so, you know, you could have some Kool-Aid. I mean, obviously, she was being used and abused. So that will never be taken away from her, at least not from me. But I'm just saying that I think that this person who probably spent a lot of their life trying to hide from their parents what was really happening because they were wounded and traumatized and scared might have grown up into a person who struggled to tell the truth, particularly when it came to people who she thought had hurt her. She might have realized that one of the ways she could feel better about some of the trauma that happened was to kind of try to stand on top of it and say, you know, I was hurt, but I'm not going to let this define me, and I'm going to call out the people who hurt me. And that felt good. And because that felt good and she'd felt so bad for so long, maybe she got into a habit of telling some falsehoods or, you know, fantasies. Maybe she got really comfortable exaggerating facts because when she had people's attention and people felt sorry for her, that felt good. Because for a long time she'd been the victim and nobody was feeling sorry for her in the room where they were trying to hurt her. You know, so I don't know what's going on with Virginia, but but I will say this. I don't think that she was hit by a bus to the extent that her kidneys began to fail and that she, you know, was on the brink of death. And I think it'll eventually come out that this was pretty fraudulent. And I don't think that we have to believe everything somebody says just because we're really sorry for them about something terrible that happened. We can be 100% sorry for somebody about horrible abuse they suffered and still be honest with ourselves when something comes up that says, that doesn't make sense. The red flags are waving. I can't agree to go with you over here, but I am really sorry this other stuff happened to you. Thanks for listening. I will see you guys tomorrow and Friday, and we'll hang out some more this week. Bye.